Okay, picture this. A private lunch right there in the White House. But it's not, the usual heads of state.
Mm-hmm.
It's the U.S. president sitting down with a foreign army chief. That image alone tells you something unusual is happening. It feels less like just lunch, more like a big geopolitical chess move happening right out in the open. And that's exactly what went down on June 18th, 2025. President Donald Trump hosting Pakistan's army chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir.
Yeah, and this wasn't just some random invitation either. It landed hot on the heels, really close, to that pretty intense four-day military clash between India and Pakistan back in May. Plus, you've got the whole backdrop of rising tensions between Israel and Iran simmering away.
So our deep dive today is all about kind of peeling back those layers on this, what really fascinating diplomatic moment. What was really going on? What are the ripples, Because this specific meeting, a military leader getting this kind of access at that exact moment, well, it feels very calculated.
Absolutely. That's the key, isn't it? The sheer unusualness of it. So today we're going to try and cut through some of the noise, understand why this one meeting matters so much. We'll give you the context, help you see the threads. We've looked at the reports, the reactions, basically trying to get to the core of the story. Okay, let's get into it. First, we kind of need to rewind just a little bit to really feel the tension before this lunch even happened. Think back to April 22nd, 2025. A truly horrific terror attack in Pahalgam, that beautiful town in Indian-administered Kashmir. 26 people killed, mostly tourists just enjoying the scenery. And immediately, India pointed the fingers straight at Pakistan, alleging, Islamabad-backed groups were responsible.
And Pakistan didn't exactly take that quietly. On May 7th, India launched what they called Operation Sindoor. These were precision strikes hitting targets they described as terrorist infrastructure inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, PUKA. And for 4 days, it was really intense. You had these two nuclear-armed neighbors trading fire drones, missiles, plus a whole lot of very heated rhetoric flying back and forth. Honestly, it had everyone watching very, very nervously.
Then, by May 10th, a ceasefire. Phew.
Yeah.
Bit of breathing room, right? The military chiefs, the DGMOs from both sides, they got on the phone, worked something out, and the shooting stopped. But, and this is interesting, the story's immediately split. India said, look, our strong response forced their hand. Pakistan had to back down.
Whereas Pakistan framed it more like a mutual, understanding.
Right, so the fighting stopped, but the region was definitely left on edge. India reported losing 5 soldiers. Pakistan claimed 51 casualties that included 11 soldiers, and sadly, several civilians too.
Yeah.
It just shows how volatile things were right before this Munir visit. So yeah, imagine that backdrop, fresh conflict, raw nerves, and then just weeks later, June 18th, President Trump decides to roll out the red carpet for Pakistan's top military guy, Asim Munir. And this isn't just any general. Munir had just been promoted to Field Marshal. That's a really rare rank, hasn't happened since Ayub Khan back in, 1959?
Exactly. That promotion itself is significant, and it underlines why this wasn't your standard diplomatic photo op. A U.S. president hosting a foreign military leader for a closed-door lunch in the cabinet room, and crucially, without their civilian bosses present. That's almost unheard of. Historically, the Pakistani army chiefs who got that kind of access, you mentioned Ayub Khan, also Zia-ul-Haq, Pervez Musharraf, they were all doubling as heads of state at the time.
Ah, right. That's a key difference.
It is. Munir is strictly military. So this invite, it feels like a deliberate signal from the U.S., maybe prioritizing that direct military channel for something specific, something urgent. It makes you ask, what was so urgent? Well, the White House kept the official agenda pretty quiet, as they often do. But the timing, the context, they give us some pretty strong clues. One really big factor seems to be those rising tensions between Israel and Iran. We know Trump was reportedly thinking about direct U.S. involvement there.
Right, that was definitely in the air.
And Pakistan, well, it shares a border with Iran, has a history of, let's say, complex cooperation. That likely made Munir a very valuable person to talk to get insights into Tehran's thinking, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Plus, you had the visible signs of U.S. readiness. 2 aircraft carriers, the Carl Vinson and the Harry S. Truman, sitting right there in the Arabian Sea. B-2 bombers on standby at Diego Garcia. It certainly looked like the U.S. was weighing options against Iran. Getting Pakistan's perspective, maybe even some level of cooperation, would be pretty important.
And beyond the whole Iran-Israel situation, there's also a really crucial counterterrorism piece here, isn't there?
Absolutely. Pakistan has definitely stepped up its efforts against groups like ISIS-Khorasan, especially on that Afghan border.
And that big capture they made recently must have helped.
Oh, hugely. The capture of Mohammed Sharifullah, he was linked to that awful 2021 Abbey Gate bombing in Kabul, the one that killed 13 U.S. service members. Munir himself actually called General Kurilla at CANCOM to sort out the extradition. That definitely earned Pakistan some serious points in Washington.
You could see why.
Yeah, and Kurilla even testified to the Senate Armed Services Committee saying Pakistan had run, I think the quote was, dozens of operations against ISIS-K. So they're seen as a partner there.
So this meeting, it really looks like the U.S. trying to, play both sides? Keep Pakistan engaged on terror and Iran, while also building up the relationship with India, that classic diplomatic tightrope walk.
It certainly looks that way, balancing very different interests in a very tricky region.
Okay, now let's get to the part that really hit the headlines. The public drama. President Trump, speaking to reporters after the lunch, well, he didn't exactly hold back on taking credit, did he?
Not at all.
He flat out claimed he stopped a war between India and Pakistan, said he personally brokered that May ceasefire. His words were pretty direct. "I love Pakistan," he said. Then adds, "Modi is a fantastic man. I spoke to him last night. We're going to make a trade deal with India."
Right, trying to cover all bases there.
Exactly. And he specifically praised Munir as extremely influential in stopping the fighting from Pakistan's side, while also giving a nod to Prime Minister Modi on India's end.
But India, they were having none of it, absolutely none. Turns out Prime Minister Modi had spoken to Trump on the phone just the night before, June 17th, a 35-minute call. And reports suggest Modi made it crystal clear that ceasefire was a direct military-to-military agreement between India and Pakistan. Full stop. No U.S. mediation involved at all.
Wow, okay. So a direct rebuttal.
A very direct rebuttal. And India's Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri, he doubled down publicly, stated very firmly that India has never accepted third-party involvement in its issues with Pakistan, and it never will.
That's a pretty strong statement of diplomatic independence, like saying, thanks, but no thanks, we handle our own business.
Precisely. We've got this. Now, back in Pakistan, as you can imagine, this White House invitation was seen as a huge success, a diplomatic coup, really. The Dawn newspaper reported officials in Islamabad were, basically thrilled, calling it a major win.
Right, a chance to be seen on the world stage again.
Exactly. And Munir, fresh from his promotion and this high-profile lunch, he definitely used the visit to project strength. He spoke to the Pakistani-American community, I think it was June 16th, at the Four Seasons in Georgetown, and he took a pretty direct shot at India, urged them to act like a civilized nation, accused Delhi of trying to impose regional hegemony. He also claimed Pakistan had forcefully rejected any Indian attempts to create a new normal of cross-border strikes. So very much setting out Pakistan's narrative.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing for Munir in D.C., was it? There were protests.
No, definitely not. Supporters of Imran Khan's party, the PT icon himself being jailed at the time, they staged some pretty vocal protests outside the Four Seasons, outside the Pakistani embassy, chanting things like, "Asim Munir, you are a coward," and "killer of Pakistanis."
Wow.
Yeah, pretty strong stuff. It really highlighted how Munir's visit, while maybe a diplomatic win externally, was also tapping into some really intense political divisions back home in Pakistan. He was kind of a lightning rod. Meanwhile, over in India, the reaction was, well, a mix, sort of irritation combined with a deliberate show of indifference from the top. The main opposition, the Congress Party, they were quite critical, called the Trump-Munir meeting a triple blow to Indian diplomacy.
A triple blow. What do they mean by that?
Their argument was, basically, it undermined India's sovereignty by suggesting U.S. intervention was needed, it gave Pakistan's military undue legitimacy, and it kind of ignored India's position. One Congress leader, Jairam Ramesh, even called for a parliamentary debate, trying to compare it to the review after the Kargil War back in 2000.
Okay, so strong words from the opposition.
Yes, but the Indian government itself, they stayed very cool. Modi and Misri just firmly stuck to their line. No U.S. involvement in the ceasefire. India's message was consistent. This is our issue. We handled it. Move along.
And then there was this. Well, let's call it the Nobel Peace Prize suggestion. That adds another layer entirely.
Right. Apparently, it was reported that Munir, or someone from his delegation, suggested President Trump deserved a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping a potential nuclear war between India and Pakistan.
And the White House jumped on that.
Well, they reportedly cited that suggestion as part of the justification for the lunch invite itself, and Trump, well, he's never been one to shy away from praise, has he? He leaned right into it with reporters, talking about stopping a war between two major nuclear nations, complaining he didn't get enough credit in the press for it. It became part of his narrative. But let's be, realistic here. The Nobel talk. That feels much more about political spin, about optics, than the reality of how that ceasefire actually happened. By all credible accounts, it was a military-to-military de-escalation, not some grand Trump diplomatic triumph.
Right. But perception matters in geopolitics.
Hugely. Perception can shape reality, or at least shape policy. This whole episode is a fascinating example of how much international diplomacy involves, well, performance alongside genuine strategic moves. It's all part of the game, influencing how things are seen globally.
So pulling it all together, what does this tell us about the bigger U.S. strategy in that part of the world? It seems complicated.
Oh, definitely complicated. On one hand, the U.S. is clearly deepening its ties with India. Defense, trade, tech cooperation, positioning India as that key democratic counterweight to China in the Indo-Pacific strategy, that's undeniable.
But then they host Pakistan's army chief.
Exactly. On the other hand, they need Pakistan. For counterterrorism, as we discussed, for its location, its potential influence, or at least insights regarding Iran and Afghanistan. It really is like trying to maintain friendships with two rivals who fundamentally distrust each other, walking that very fine line.
So for Pakistan, the lunch was a boost, a way to show relevance.
Absolutely. A chance to flex some geopolitical muscle, maybe regain some standing after being somewhat sidelined.
And for India, a reminder to stand firm on its principles.
Precisely. A reminder to be vigilant and reiterate that core principle. We handle our own regional disputes. Thank you very much.
So we've walked through a really intricate diplomatic dance that played out that day, June 18th, 2025. Layers of tension, strategy, and yeah, quite a bit of public relations maneuvering too. It really gives you a snapshot of just how volatile that region is and the incredibly complex balancing act the U.S. is trying to pull off.
And as the dust sort of settles from this very unique meeting, the questions definitely linger, don't they? Will this actually lead to a real sustained improvement in U.S.-Pakistan ties? Or was it more of a one-off, maybe useful for Trump's image at the time?
And India's very firm rejection of U.S. mediation, will that cause any friction with Washington down the line?
Mm-hmm.
Or will the bigger picture, the trade deals, the China factor, smooth that over?
Good questions. And then there's the Middle East angle. Can Pakistan actually play a helpful role in maybe de-escalating things between Israel and Iran? Or is it just too caught up in its own regional rivalries and, frankly, its internal politics?
Yeah.
It's a story that's definitely not over. And understanding these kinds of specific moves, these signals, is really crucial to following what happens next.
So what does this all mean for you? Trying to make sense of the headlines. Well, South Asia clearly remains a geopolitical hotspot, a real powder keg. This White House lunch, as unusual as it was, is just one chapter in what's a very long and often very gripping story. Definitely don't expect the drama to end anytime soon. Keep watching how these relationships shift and turn because the ripples, they spread far beyond just India and Pakistan.